I've signed into my Team Services account, and the first thing that I'm going to do is click on New and create a new team project. I'm going to provide a project name. If I wanted to, I could provide a description. I'm going to choose my process template, and for the purposes of our demonstration today, I'm going to go ahead and choose Scrum, although you could do the same types of things that we're going to do today with either the Agile or the CMMI template. And I would recommend that you take a look at the links that I'm posting alongside this video for help in choosing an appropriate process template. And then I'm going to choose Git as my default version control provider. Although I have two options here, one is Git and the other is Team Foundation version control, it's worth noting that you can actually have one Team Foundation version control repository and unlimited Git repositories associated with this one team project. I'm going to click Create Project, and then I'm going to wait a moment for this to be created and navigate to the default landing page. Alright, so this is the default dashboard page that's going to show up. I'm going to record a video in the near future where we're going to go through and talk about all the different types of widgets that you can do here and other types of reporting that's available to you. But for today, we're going to go ahead and click on the Work tab and we're going to focus on requirements management. We're now looking at the backlog items view. From this view, we can very easily create new product backlog items, which are requirements, or we can create bugs. I'm going to go ahead and create a couple of product backlog items for my new blog site. The first one is going to be register a new author. The next one is going to be create a new post. Next, we'll have adding comments. And we'll probably need to have some type of moderation for those comments. So I've created 4 requirements. Let's take a look at the anatomy of one of these requirements. We'll open up register a new author. And what you see here is the surface where you can enter information about a product backlog item. You're going to hear me use the phrase work item. This is a work item. So is a feature. So are bugs, tasks, and epics. And we'll talk about those in a minute. But I want to start by taking a look at the different pieces of information that you can fill out on here. First of all, you see it says unassigned. I'm going to go ahead and assign this to me. To the right of that, that says go to discussion. There are 0 comments available. Keep an eye on that. We're going to come back to it. Next, we're going to add a tag. These tags are free-form strings that you can use to classify your work items and make it easier for you to filter or search for them. We're going to go ahead and name this blog, and that'll make it easier to find. I'm also going to go ahead and tag this with 2016. Further to the right here, we can save and close, but I'm just going to go ahead and save this. And that'll be important because I'm about to show you the history. And the next thing that I'm going to do is click on follow. Now that I'm following this, anytime a change is saved on this dialog, I'll get a notification about that. Alright, so one of the fields that changes depending upon your process template selection is the list of states. I'm going to choose approved, and I'm going to go ahead and save that just so you can see what that update does. Now that that's been saved, I want you to take a look at the iteration. This is where we can change which sprint or iteration that you're planning to perform this work in. We're going to go ahead and leave that default, which means that it hasn't yet been scheduled and it's still on our backlog. Next, I would go through and fill out a description for this. What are the types of things that I need to do in order to register a new author? Or if you prefer, you can use user story terminology here. Next, it's important that you provide acceptance criteria. This describes the picture of success for the implementer of this product backlog item. We have the ability to choose effort values for these, and I like to use a distinct number from the Fibonacci sequence for these, so I'm going to go ahead and choose a 3 for the effort on this. And then if I wanted to, I could relate this to either an existing work item or create a new work item, and it would automatically be referencing this particular product backlog item. If I scroll down, you'll see there's a discussion block here. I'm going to go ahead and add a comment here, and then I'm going to save this work item. Now you'll see at the top, there's one discussion comment available for me to review. Take a look at the state graph and you'll notice that this backlog item went from a new state to an approved state by the product owner, Christopher Roberts, on 8/12. Additionally, underneath of that, you'll see the History tab. This history information shows the revisions for every single change that was made on this work item. I don't use that terribly often, but if you have a need to audit or investigate an incident, this is where you would go to find that level of detailed information about the history of this work item's changes. I can click on Add Link and choose an existing item, or I can click on Add Link and create a new item. And the different types of relationships we can form are child relationships, parent relationships, hyperlinks out to any arbitrary document repository, or a variety of others that are in the dropdown. Next, I'm going to click on the Attachments tab. I'm going to click Add Attachment, and there I can browse to a file on my hard drive to attach. There are no restrictions on the types of files you add, but there's a 4 meg size limit. And while it is possible to customize that, you should be mindful of the impact that might have on your storage and your performance. Now I'm going to go ahead and close this product backlog item, and you'll see it actually now shows in the approved state with an effort of 3. You may have noticed while looking at this list of product backlog items that they really fall into 2 functional categories. We have author registration, and then we have several things that are related to posts on our blog site. So what I'd like to do next is create a couple of work items that are features, and then arrange these product backlog items so that they're children of those features. So I'm going to click on features, and I'm going to create a couple of new ones. This first one is going to be site registration. And the next one is going to be blog posts. Now that I've opened up this new feature, you're going to notice that it has a lot of the same types of fields that we saw whenever we were looking at the product backlog items. I'm going to go ahead and assign that to myself. And what you would expect to do here is type out, again, descriptions, acceptance criteria, potentially effort if you'd like to do that at the feature level. And after you add a description, you might want to add some different links or take a look at the attachments or fill out any of these other fields that are provided for you when you're looking at a feature. I'm going to go ahead and save this now, and then I'm going to close out of it. And then I'm going to click over here where it says panel off, and we're going to turn on the mapping panel. This mapping panel provides us with a really easy drag and drop way to create that hierarchy of requirements that I just talked about. So I'm going to drag register a new author over under site registration. Then I'm going to go ahead and shift click and highlight the rest of these and drag them under blog posts. Now if I go back to features, you're going to notice that if I click into them, you're going to see that list of associated product backlog items. Because I have the panel mapping turned on, you'll see that there are no epics currently in this system. Well, let me show you how to turn on epics. I'm going to click on the gear. Then on settings, I'm going to scroll down under general and I'm going to click on backlogs. Then I'm going to check epics and I'm going to save. This is also where you would go if you wanted to turn off features and only use backlog items. Now that I've done that, you'll see epics show up here on the top left. I'm going to click that and I'm going to create one epic. I like to use epics for large pieces of work, typically that are going to span several iterations and that are going to be multi-featured. So let's call this epic Coder and Hiker Blog. I'm going to go ahead and open that up now. And just like the other types of work items, it has very similar fields. I'm going to assign that to myself, and I'm going to go ahead and set that to in progress, and then I'm going to save and close. Now if I go back to the features backlog list, you'll see that Coder and Hiker Blog is an epic that's eligible for me to work with. And if I highlight these 2 features and drag them over, they're going to be associated with that epic. Now if I go back to the epic view, you're going to see the entire tree of work items. That looks about right for this little blog site that I want to build. There are probably some things that I missed, and whenever I go and do a backlog review, I'll identify those and add some more requirements. But for now, this is going to work fine. So the next thing that I want to show you are some different ways that you can look at these requirements. I'm going to go ahead and click on queries up here by backlogs, and then I'm going to click on new, and I'm going to click new query. And what we're going to do now is we're going to build a query to find all of our epics that are active. And what I mean by active is that the state is not equal to removed or done. So we're going to click on does not contain, and then we're going to list those off. We're going to say removed and done. And if I save and ran that right now, it would get us a whole lot of work items. What we want to do though is specify that we specifically want the ones that are epics. So I'm going to go ahead and save that now. And I'm going to put that under my shared query so my whole team can see it. And I'm going to name that active epics. And you can see the results in the bottom panel. There's just the one epic in this system. Over here on the top right, you can see I can actually select a couple of different options for this view. If I want to see the work item to the right, I can collapse the menu on the left, and then I can see them this way. Don't forget, anytime you see a list of these epics, or work items in general, you can usually find column options. And that'll allow you to specify what you really care about. So in this view, we know that those work items are all epics. So let's get rid of the work item type. Maybe right here we don't care who they're assigned to. And then we're going to go ahead and hit OK. Then we're going to go ahead and shrink that up a little bit and make this bigger. So now we have a better view for looking at these. And if we wanted to click through the list, we could do that. But if I don't want to see them at all, I could also click here and turn them off. Now I would have a more flat list of these. It's also worth noting that these work item queries can actually be imported directly into Excel to have a connected spreadsheet. So let's do that next. I've opened up Excel, and what you'll notice here is there's a Team tab. I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to choose New List. You would select your Team Foundation server or Team Services instance, and then choose the team project that you want to work with. From here, I get a list of queries, and I'm going to go ahead and choose from my shared queries the active epics. Okay, so we can see the results of this query now. We have the ID, the title, the state, and the tags. If you recall, we selected just those columns whenever we were looking at the results of this work item query, whenever we were in Team Services. We can change that here as well. If we want perhaps to add in the work item type again, we would simply go down, find that in the list, and click to add it back in. And when I hit OK, it'll bring that over for us. I can rearrange those by clicking on Choose Columns and moving the work item type up and hitting OK, and that'll move that column over. Now, the other thing that's really nice about this view is if I want to create new epics, I can do that right here. And so if Coder and Hiker blog is the really high-level planning item that I'm working on right now, but maybe next, when I get done with the Coder and Hiker blog, I want to create a merchandising site, then that might be something I create right here. And we're going to leave that in the new state, and maybe we'll go ahead and add a tag to that, and that'll be ecom. Now, all I have to do to publish this back into Team Foundation Server or Team Services is go up here and click Publish. That'll take just a moment, and as soon as you see an ID show up here, that means it's been synchronized over. And if we go back over here and refresh our query, here you'll see our new epic. All right, we can do that for several other work item types as well. And what I like to do is create several queries to help me find quickly the information that I'm going to need on a daily basis. So let's go ahead and create a couple more queries. I'm going to click on New Query again. And this time, let's find all of our features. We're going to follow that same pattern that we just did. And we're going to make sure we don't get any of them that are removed or that are already done. And we're going to save that to our team as active features. Let's run that query. And here are our 2 active features. We'll probably want one for our product backlog items as well. Let's click on Active Features, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on this button here and save this query as Active PBIs for product backlog items. And then we just need to come over here, and we need to choose Product Backlog Items. You'll note since I chose Work Item Type on the left, whenever I click the drop down for value, it knew that I was talking about work item types. Let's go ahead and save that, and let's see the results. Great, that's exactly what we expected. So now we have a couple of queries to help us get around, but let's look at yet another way where we can look at our requirements. I'm going to click back on Backlogs, and here from Backlog Items, we're going to click on Board. This is the Board view. From this view, you can see product backlog items showing as cards. These cards have a variety of different fields currently showing on them, and we can customize what those fields are. You'll notice that there are different columns, and that the names of these columns, New, Approved, Committed, and Done, correspond to the states for a product backlog item. At the top of these columns, you may also notice that there's currently a green number 1 out of 5, and in Committed, a green 0 out of 5. And what that means is we currently have selected a work in progress limit of 5 for each of these columns. That comes from manufacturing theory, and the idea here is that we want to keep track of how many different things we have in the different states so that we can focus upon them and get them done. While you're not required to use those, and we don't enforce those limits, they're available to you should you choose to do so. Notice that only one of these product backlog items, the one in the approved column, is showing very much on its card. And the reason for that is we currently have only these fields available to show. Some of these fields aren't set on the other product backlog items. And if you'd like to be able to set them, there are a couple of ways we can do that. Of course, we can click into it and we can go and set those. For example, we'll assign this to me. And now that shows up. But maybe I wanted to do that right here from this board view. I can do that, I just need to turn on an option. So I'm going to click on Configure Settings. And then I'm going to scroll down a bit here, and I'm going to choose Show Empty Fields. Additionally, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the ID, because it's very common when I talk about a requirement that I'm going to use the ID to communicate that. Also, notice that I can add additional fields. I'm going to do that now, and we're going to choose Priority, and we're going to save. By choosing these Show Empty items, you can see that fields that are unset, such as the unassigned user, will now show up, and I can select those directly off of the card. Priority, now that it's showing, can be changed right here as well. Now let's make some customizations to our board. First of all, I'm going to show you a couple things that we can do with our cards. I'm going to go under Cards, and I'm going to choose Styles and add a new styling rule. And this styling rule is going to be called Priority. The Priority styling rule we are going to use to lightly highlight the background color of all of our Priority 1 items. So we're going to go ahead and choose this light color of blue, and then we're going to go down and add a rule criteria, and we're going to specify that our priority is equal to 1. I'm going to save now. You'll notice that since we don't have any priority 1 items, that nothing has happened. Let's go ahead and change this to be priority 1. Now you'll notice the background color of the card has changed. In addition to that, we can also color and add styling rules for our tags. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that anything that's tagged 2016 will show up yellow. I also would like any of the tags that show up as blog to be a unique bright red color. I'm going to save again, and now you can see these tags really pop out on this background. So now that we've customized our cards, it's time to do some column customization. So this work item is now in the approved state. Let's say my team has committed to work on this now. Now it's in my committed column, and you can see that's reflected in my cumulative flow diagram. I would like to use the committed state to represent both in development, development done, and in QA. In order to do that though, I'd like some way to call it out on the board when it's done with the developers and it's in the QA resources hands. Let's go ahead and take a look at that customization panel again. Now I can go down under columns, and I'm going to create a new column for our board. And this is going to be called in QA. Here you could also set a work in progress limit to something other than 5 if you so chose. And down here you'll note we can map what state belongs to this column. So we want any bug that's in a committed state and any product backlog item that's in a committed state to show up. I'm going to go ahead and reorder that and show that it happens after committed. And then I could optionally provide a definition of done. Definition of done can either be plain text or markdown. I'm going to go ahead and use an example that's written in markdown, and I'm going to save now. So now you see we have a new column in QA, and without modifying the state of this work item, I can drag it over to the in QA column. And you'll note if I click on the definition of done, it's actually providing me with a bit of interesting information. In addition to modifying columns, we can also add swim lanes. Swim lanes are a way that we can subdivide the work that's in progress. I'm going to go ahead and add a new swim lane, and we're going to call it escalated. Now that we have a separate swim lane, we have a default one, and I can drag work into that. And also if something else comes up that's high priority, for example, I can drag that into the escalated pipeline, and we can make sure that we're working on it. There are many uses for swim lanes, and I would encourage you to consider how they might be helpful to you. Similar customizations are available to you when you're looking at boards under epics and features as well. Let's move over now and take a look at our current sprint. When you come to the current sprint tab, if you haven't yet scheduled anything to be in Sprint 1, you'll see this screen. So the first thing that we need to do is actually schedule some work in this sprint. I'm going to go back to my backlog items view, and I'm going to choose backlog. From this view, you can see that there are 3 current product backlog items that are not yet complete. I'm going to go ahead and highlight all 3 of those. I'm going to right-click on them, and I'm going to say Move to Iteration, Current. This work is now scheduled to be completed in the current sprint. Let's go take a look at that sprint again. Now that we have this work showing up, you'll note that there's another problem. We haven't yet actually scheduled the dates for this sprint. I'm going to now click Set Dates, and then I'm going to schedule this sprint. We're going to go ahead and schedule it for the week we're currently in and next week. I'm now going to save and close. You'll notice that it identified that we currently have 6 workdays remaining in this sprint. We have 3 different tabs for this view now. We have the backlog view, the board view, and a capacity planning view. The first view that we're going to look at is the board view. This board is slightly different from the other boards we were looking at. This is our task board. You'll notice we have the ability to right here click and add a new item. The type of item that I'm going to be adding is a task. These tasks are actionable pieces of work that I need to complete in order to implement the product backlog item, register a new author. We're going to go ahead and create a couple of tasks now. The first one is going to be called Create User Interface. Now that I've created this task, you'll notice that there are three fields that are currently shown here. Title, we have who it's assigned to, and over here on the right, we have effort. I would also like to show activity. Let's go turn that on. I'm going to first turn on Show ID for the task. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to click on New Field. I'm going to choose Activity, and make sure that Show Empty Fields is checked. Notice that activity now shows on this card, and I can select which type of activity this task is. We're going to go ahead and call this a development task, and I'm going to assign that to myself, and I'm going to select an effort of 4 hours. I'm going to pause now and create several more tasks and then resume the video. I've created my tasks now, and I zoomed the browser out just a little bit so you can see more of them at once. Notice that I've provided an estimate, I provided the activity, and for some of them I've specified different tags to help me sort and query on these tasks at a later date. On the left, you'll see under the product backlog item, the total amount of effort has rolled up, and there are 18.5 total hours necessary to implement this PBI. Up at the top of the column next to To Do, you'll see the total effort that remains for this entire sprint. If I'd like to collapse all the tasks associated with a product backlog item, I can click on Collapse this row right here. And that will allow me to more quickly sort through this list. Now that I've created my tasks, I'm going to go ahead and look at the Capacity tab. We're now looking at the Capacity Planning tab, and you'll notice that I have added 4 members to the team, specified the activities and the capacity per day that they have for this sprint. I have also chosen several team day off ranges, and that has reduced the total capacity available for my team to 48 hours over this period. You'll notice that we're in the red because we have 58.5 hours of work to do and only 48 hours of planned capacity. You will also notice here under Work by Activity that we have more development activities planned than we have resources available to do them. We also currently do not know who is going to be performing the 7.5 hours of documentation work. Let's go ahead and increase some of this capacity. Now you notice we have enough total team capacity. We have a surplus of hours available to complete our development, but we're still not sure about how we're going to resolve these 2 team members being over capacity. Let's go ahead and see what would happen if we added a little bit of extra time for myself to do a secondary activity. That's not going to be enough time for documentation. Let's go ahead and increase that a bit. I've now added enough capacity to complete the documentation work that had been planned, but you can see we will probably want to do something else to help resolve the issues we're having down here with these 2 resources. I happen to know that we can just go ahead and increase their capacity right now, so let's do that. And that actually puts our project in the green. Although we have an excess of capacity now, and we would want to make sure that we take good advantage of that whenever we're planning our sprint. This concludes the content that I wanted to provide you with an overview of for requirements management and planning in Visual Studio Team Services. I hope you find this content helpful, and I encourage you to head over to visualstudio.com to sign up and do some hands-on experimentation with Visual Studio Team Services. In future videos, I will go into more detail around dashboards, reporting, developer services, testing, build, and release management.